Today, a very unpopular opinion and 12 reasons on why the Sony FX6 is actually a way cheaper camera than the Sony FX3 when you factor in all of the extra value that you actually get for the extra money. Reason number one, and the most obvious, we're gonna get it out of the way at the very beginning, internal NDs. Now, you hear this all the time. Internal NDs, once you get internal NDs in a camera, you never want to go back and it's so much easier. But let me tell you what makes the Sony FX6 internal NDs so special and why they are worth the money. There are three parts that make the internal NDs inside the Sony FX6 so special. Part number one, it has a feature where you can go auto ND. What does that mean? Well, it's very simple. You set your f-stop, you set your shutter angle, and for the most part, you put auto ND, and when you go from outside to inside or the light changes, the camera does a great job of adjusting the internal ND. What does that mean for you? Well, it's pretty simple. In a run and gun situation, you don't have to worry about exposure as much. Now, this has streamlined my workflow like you wouldn't believe. Can you imagine how incredible your life would be if you never had to worry about exposure again? Part number two, these NDs are color matching. What does that mean? When you go from no ND to slight ND, it doesn't shift your colors, and that can't be said for a lot of the external screw-on NDs that you use with your cameras today. Part number three, the NDs inside this camera are electronic and variable. What does that mean? When you use auto ND and you're going from outside to inside, it's not just hard stops every single time you go from 1 to 2. It gradually, little by little, goes from 1 to 2 to 3. And at the end of the day, this doesn't burn any one of your shots and it keeps the footage usable. Reason number two, and by far my favorite one, cache recording. What does that mean? Well, at the end of the day, a lot for your file management system and your editing process. Imagine filming a hockey game and trying to capture nothing but highlights. You're gonna have to film every single play, and at the end of the day, in your editing process, upload that footage to your computer and go through absolutely everything and select nothing but the hits, and that takes time. Well, with cache recording up to 31 seconds that the FX6 gives you, you can actually record absolutely everything without touching the record button. And when something amazing happens, you hit the record button and you automatically have 31 seconds of the previous action plus the highlight itself. So when a goal happens, I hit the record button and I have 31 seconds of the previous footage. And at the end of the day, the highlight, whenever I'm done with the shot, I hit the record button again and I have nothing but hits in my editing process. And that saves me so much time. And that is worth every single penny alone if you're gonna do sports videography or documentaries. Reason number three, the Sony FX6 has a much better form factor for filming. Now, if you have a YouTube channel and you're doing social media content for yourself, the Sony FX3 has so many pluses, and that might be the camera for you. But if you want to do professional productions and you want to sell your service and you want to film for longer periods of time, the Sony FX6 has a much better form factor to get that job done and make that process as enjoyable as possible. Reason number four, the Sony FX6 has a much better rugged build. If I dropped both cameras, I would be very worried about the Sony FX3, and I wouldn't worry as much when it comes to the Sony FX6, as that is a tank and it is designed to take a beating. And if you're gonna film every single day and you're gonna put a ton of miles on your camera, I have more faith in the Sony FX6 than I do in the Sony FX3. Reason number five, the external body on the Sony FX6 is designed for you to operate most of the camera without the menu, and that saves me a lot of time. When I owned my Sony FX3, I would spend a lot of time in the menu, and I don't necessarily have to do that in the Sony FX6, and that saves me a ton of time, and at the end of the day is a priceless thing that the Sony FX6 brings to the table. Reason number six, no pun intended, this is a big one. If you're selling your service and you're charging a premium and you're going to clients, size matters. Anybody that tells you that size doesn't matter, they're lying to you. The professionalism of the Sony FX6 always puts a smile on every single one of my clients' faces. And at the end of the day, maybe nobody really complained when I showed up with my Sony FX3, but they didn't smile either. And I do notice a huge difference when it comes to the reception of my services when I show up with the Sony FX6. And I do believe that the size and body factor has a big part to do with it. Reason number 7, a usable top handle. Now, when you think about it, both cameras have top handles, but I cannot stand the top handle on the Sony FX3. It almost gets in the way of absolutely everything, and it really takes away the biggest plus that the Sony FX3 brings to the table, which is its size factor. And I never really caught myself enjoying the experience of handheld shooting with the top handle on the Sony FX3. Now, when I use the Sony FX6's top handle, that is an enjoyable process and everything seems like it belongs. And at the end of the day, the Sony FX6 has a very usable top handle and the FX3 not so much. Reason number 8, the Sony FX6 comes with an incredible side handle and it makes your handheld shooting enjoyable experience. And if you ever rig it out and do some shoulder work with it, you can extend the side handle and operate the record button from it. It is incredible. Reason number 9, the Sony FX6 comes with a much better stock battery. Now, don't get me wrong, the stock battery that comes with the Sony FX3 is really, really good. But the stock battery that comes with the Sony FX6 is great, and I often get 3+ hours of camera usage out of it, and for the most part, it's enough to film a full hockey game with 3 20-minute periods, warm-ups, and press. Reason number 10, much better battery solutions. Now, when you think about the Sony FX3, that battery is good, and you can buy more of them, and at the end of the day, 3 or 4 batteries might be able to get you a full day's worth of shooting. But the Sony FX6's stock battery comes in 3 different sizes, and if you buy the biggest one, that battery alone might be enough for you to get a full day's worth of work out of your camera, and that part is incredible. And when you factor in V-mount batteries on both cameras, it is a much easier process to put a V-mount battery on the Sony FX6 and keep the form factor than it is building out the Sony FX3, and at the end of the day, making it just as big as the Sony FX6. Reason number 11, a much better onboard monitor. Now, I can't stand the little tiny monitor that comes with the Sony FX3. And at the end of the day, the one that comes with the Sony FX6 isn't that much more bigger, but it is a lot better when it comes to exposing my shots. And very often, I actually run and gun with that monitor alone. And when it came to using the Sony FX3, I always needed an external monitor for incredible exposure. Reason number 12. Future-proofing your business. Now, when you think about it, if you want to do this as a business and you want to take it really seriously, one day you're going to upgrade from your Sony FX3 to get a bigger sized camera, one that can impress your clients and could do a tiny bit more and make your life easier. And the FX6 is that camera. When I think about my FX6, if I had it for the next 20 years, I would be fine with it. I wouldn't even think about upgrading or getting another camera because the picture quality is incredible. And until it decides to stop turning on, I will use it till the day it shuts down for good. If you want to check out any of my professional work, hop on Instagram, search They Record. My work will pop up. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you found this valuable, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll definitely see you again.